All right, and next up is James Hathaway. So has everyone met James? Do you all know who James is?
They've all heard about James.
James
Right.
Birth was the one that launched all of this. So James was born when Margie and Jake moved to Denver. Dr. Bradley. So
His fault. Okay? None of us would be here if it wasn't because of him.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you. But you've heard bits and pieces of some of the story, and I've been reflecting on this, and I thought it might be interesting to put something together to kind of illustrate exactly what transpired. You've heard of the Bradley method, of course, and you know how it's affected each and everyone in this room. But there's more to the story about this, and I thought it might be interesting just to go through. All right, in 1965, Dr. Bradley was coming out with a brand new book called English Childbirth. I'm sure you've heard of it by now. And my parents got a wonderful opportunity to hear about this, and Dr. Bradley actually came to Los Angeles to talk about his new book. So a friend of theirs, Karen Osterlund, was able to acquire some tickets to get to go see Dr. Bradley talk about this, and for my parents to actually get an opportunity to talk with Dr. Bradley and to hear about all there is about natural childbirth and how they wanted to go back to their doctor and talk about this.
And this was, we were both La Leche League leaders. And this was part of the stuff Marion was talking about earlier. La Leche League put in that emphasis on natural childbirth. And so he came to Los Angeles, and I dragged Jay over and saw him talk.
Now remember, I'm the fourth child, so they had 3 horrendous birth experiences first. And they were looking for some alternative. They wanted something. My mom was praying about it. She went back to their doctor. The doctor said there's no way that a husband can be in the delivery room. There's no way to have natural childbirth. And as you see here, this deity decided that I was definitely going to be born that weekend. Monday morning came, nothing happened. Tuesday morning came. My mother rolled over, looked at my father, and said, "That's it." With a 1, 2, and 4-year-old in tow, they went down to Los Angeles International Airport, and that morning got on the plane. Unfortunately, there was a problem because they sat on the tarmac for 2 hours because of fog. Longer than the flight going to Denver. At the airport, there was a wheelchair and some security waiting for somebody on the plane. They weren't sure exactly what's going on. And you guys commented about that, going, "Oh, I wonder what happened. You know, what sort of incident could have happened on the plane?" So they walked out of the airport, found out later that it was for them. They got a taxi, and they drove to Dr. Bradley's office. And you can see here, Dr. Bradley's office is this building. The Porter Hospital is across the street from his office. There's a grassy knoll in front of his office. And this is where they dropped off the luggage and proceeded to go into Dr. Bradley's office, where we believe is where he achieved his gray hair. So going into the building, you go up to the second landing, and there's the door. This is historic. I have returned. It's at the corner of Porter Memorial Hospital, a sanitarium at the time. This is a picture of Porter, what it might have looked like back in 1965. They've added a bunch of new buildings since then. I had the fortunate opportunity to go back there 3 weeks ago to Denver and to walk through these steps once again. This is a newer entrance. The building that I was born in is actually right behind this one to the left. My parents, after visiting with Dr. Bradley, went to the La Vista Motel. We believe that they rent by the minute. I have never, ever stepped foot on the property until 2 weeks ago. And I actually walked through the place, got to go inside the corridors. They had mattresses in the corridors. I'm not sure why. This is the door where my parents stayed. The next morning, a knock comes on the door. And my father goes to the door and goes, "Who is it?" And it turns out there was we don't think that the hotel inside was this nice. But at the door, there was a lady standing there with a 3-week-old baby. They're their own personal angel, apparently. This is the woman, Karen Osterlin, and her daughter, Paula. She took my parents and my family, gave them a roof over their heads, a car to drive, and food in their belly, and took care of them. The next day, Karen, she just had Paula, who was 3 weeks old at the time, and they had a lot of laundry that was accumulating, so she decided she needed to go to the laundromat. So she went to the laundromat, but she was fortunate enough to indicate to my parents that, if you need the car, just call me and I'll come back. So they did indeed call. And Karen quickly responded, "I'm sorry, you're just going to have to wait. I just started the dryer." Fortunately, there was not a major problem. They went to Porter Hospital. On the way there, they got to see a shooting star. They thought that was a good sign. The next day, they went back to Porter Hospital. My parents were able to watch the Dodgers win the World Series on a color television set. When my mom was in labor, a nurse came in and offered her tea, and they actually brought it to her. Imagine that. Today it would be hard-pressed for them to do that, but back then they actually took care of her. And then later on, my mom decided to ask, because she had 3 medicated births prior to this, she's like, what about the drugs? She was very concerned. So she asked the nurse, Mrs. Buckingham, what about the drugs? And her response was incredible. She says, "Why? You're doing just fine." And my mother never talked about it again. She had a natural childbirth, no problems whatsoever. This was a delivery room at that time. We're not sure if it's exactly the same, but it's kind of interesting to see what it was back then. My father was whisked away to get into his green scrubs, as he puts it. And he has this whole talk about the bag of waters breaking. So all of a sudden he's in the room, and they have these doors on the different cabinets inside the room, and people are opening them up and standing behind them and looking through them, trying to get away from something. And he's like, "I wonder what's going on here." And then it occurs. And he has, he says that it is indeed salt water. Now, when I was born, as the baby comes through the birth canal, it rotates up, and the first person that I was in view of was my father. So that was the first person that we ever laid eyes to one another, which is a tremendous experience. He remembers it much better than I do, but it's still very impactful. This is the next day in front of Porter Hospital. This is a picnic. This is my mother. This is her birthday. I was born the day after. I was born the day before her birthday, but this is us on the lawn. I'm the baby there with my redheaded brother, my brunette sister, and the blonde there is also my sister. And the little girl on the blanket is Paula, and her 2 brothers, and Karen or maybe Eric or the father was taking the picture. And it's just interesting to see that so many years ago. And it's funny where I got that picture. It wasn't from my parents. I actually achieved this picture from Paula. Later that day, they went sightseeing to the Red Rocks. They'd never been to Denver before, so they decided that they needed to see something, so they went around and saw some great things. And before leaving, they went back to Dr. Bradley's office, and Dr. Bradley said, "Hey, do not come back to Denver every time you want to have a baby started out in California." So here's Paula and I. On the flight home, it turned out to be the exact same crew. And initially they go, "Oh, what a cute little baby." And then it dawned on them, like, "Weren't you on the plane like 4 or 5 days ago?" So it was a little shocking to them. So I went back to Porter Hospital. We've gone back many times just to check out the facility and see how things are going and such. This is a wonderful lake next to the Continental Divide in Colorado. For some reason, when we go to Denver, we'd like to go sightseeing instead. And you know about the Continental Divide? It's a place where if you stand on it, whatever rains to the right side goes to the Pacific Ocean, whatever rains on the left side goes to the Atlantic. So it's kind of a very unique spot. Here's a picture of Paula and I just 2 years ago. Here's Karen and my mother. Here's the three ladies that are incredibly inspiring and changed my world and my life. I went back to Porter Hospital, and I thought it would be good to give them a little token of what happened. So I took a copy of Husband Gilch Childbirth, and I wrote a little inscription in it. And I was born here in 1965, Porter Hospital, James Hathaway, the birth that started the Bradley method. And I put it in their library. Here's a picture of Dr. Bradley and Martha and 2 of their grandkids. Now, Karen Osterland was instrumental in making this all happen. Marge and Jay Hathaway created the Bradley method, but there's a lot of steps that took place to make all of this possible. And Karen Osterland is the lady that helped them decide to make this journey, this transition, because they really did it on a whim up to a certain point, but I didn't know the whole story. And it wasn't only 2 years ago that I found out more of the story than I'd ever heard before. Because I was talking to Karen, I had a great opportunity to do a little interview with her, and I asked her, so my parents are nuts, totally insane. They're the craziest people I have ever met. Nobody in their right mind would ever get on a plane, 9 months pregnant, and fly to Denver, Colorado. And Karen looks at me, she cocks her head to the side and goes, I did that. I was like, no, Karen, you were living in Denver, and my parents took the journey, flew and did all. She says, no, I was living near your folks. I was like, what? She said, yeah, I was living in the Santa Fernando Valley, and they got an opportunity to move to Denver, Colorado. So her husband packed up the car with 3 of the kids and drove to Denver, and Karen got on a plane with one of her sons, Kenny, and flew to Denver, Colorado. And Eric met them, drove them to Dr. Bradley's office, and once again, they go to see Dr. Bradley, and Dr. Bradley says, you're not going home, you're going across the street and having your baby. So literally, they followed a lot of the same steps are identical in what happened. And we had a very unique opportunity because last year we got together with Karen, and she's been dying of emphysema. She has a lung problem and such. And she took a turn for the worst, and we had to medevac her off. We did a cruise with her, and we medevaced her off, and she flew to Juneau, where she died 2 days later. And I had the unique experience of here's this lady that was instrumental in bringing me into this world, and I had the honor of helping her leave it. So we have a nice little, it's a little historical reference of what happened. It'll be available on the document library on hsc.com of what happened, because this is at the memorial that we went to last year. And this is a very strange thing. There's an actual note from Karen to my parents about how they should come to Denver, how she had such a wonderful experience, how she would take care of them. And it's funny how she said all these things, and yet they still wound up at the La Vista Motel. Go figure. So it's just a very interesting thing. This all transpired almost 50 years ago. And it's amazing to see everybody here and realize how impactful this has been and how we are, in fact, through all of you, making this legacy indirectly affecting most every birth in the world. Anytime there's a husband present at a birth, that is because of us. Anytime there's good nutrition is because of us. Anytime that there's good breastfeeding, because of wonderful mentors that we have, we're able to extend this. So the Bradley method really is the melting pot of the greatest minds in the world. And we thank everybody for coming here and helping us expand this, and I thought this was just a wonderful place to express some of these things that I've seen. So thank you very much. So that's the presentation for that, and now we've got another video.